All right, get ready for this one because we're going deep on some pretty crazy theories today.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about the Adam and Eve story by Chan Thomas.
Okay.
Think of it like one of those detective stories, but instead of like fingerprints and clues, the clues are scattered across ancient myths and geological formations and even declassified CIA documents.
I love it.
So we're gonna try to piece all this together. It's gonna be fun.
That's right. We're not just gonna rehash, the same old biblical tale.
Right.
We're looking at the Adam and Eve story as a potential record of a cataclysmic event that reshaped the planet.
Okay.
Like an ancient warning system that's been hidden in plain sight.
So let's break this down.
Yeah.
This theory revolves around the idea that the Earth has a history of these massive upheavals, cataclysms that have drastically changed its geography and climate.
Right, and not just these slow, gradual shifts over millions of years.
Right.
We're talking sudden, violent events that could transform the planet in a matter of days.
In a matter of days. Wow. Okay, so paint me a picture. What would one of these cataclysms have looked like?
Okay, so imagine this. You're living on Earth thousands of years ago. Maybe you're a hunter-gatherer.
Okay.
Maybe you're part of a budding civilization.
Yeah.
Life seems normal. The sun rises and sets, but then boom, the Earth's crust shifts.
Whoa.
And imagine winds whipping across the globe at over 1,000 miles per hour.
Oh my gosh.
Massive earthquakes splitting continents apart.
Really?
Volcanoes erupting and tsunamis so high they dwarf any skyscraper we have today.
That sounds utterly terrifying. I mean, would anything survive that?
Well, according to Thomas, some did.
Okay.
He suggests that those who took refuge in caves or on high mountaintops or even in boats might have had a chance.
Wow.
Can you imagine being one of those survivors, waking up to a world completely unrecognizable, having to start from scratch?
Talk about a bad day, but it makes you wonder.
Yep.
If these events are really cyclical, like Thomas says, how much of our history has been lost?
Right.
How many civilizations might have risen and fallen before us, leaving behind only whispers in myths and legends?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, think about all the flood myths that exist in cultures all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
From the biblical story of Noah's Ark
Of course.
to tales from ancient Mesopotamia and even Native American tribes.
Wow.
Could these stories that have been passed down through generations actually be echoes of these cataclysmic events?
It's like a giant jigsaw puzzle where most of the pieces are missing, but we're starting to see a pattern emerge.
Yeah.
So how does the Adam and Eve story fit into all of this?
Well, Thomas believes the Adam and Eve story is like a symbolic representation of one of these cataclysms.
Okay.
Think about it. The expulsion from the Garden of Eden could be seen as a metaphor for humanity being forced to adapt to a harsher, more challenging world after one of these events.
Okay, so we've got the cataclysm, the potential loss of civilizations, and a possible hidden meaning in the Adam and Eve story.
Right.
But what's the evidence? What makes Thomas think this actually happened?
Well, for starters, he points to the geological record.
Okay.
He talks about formations like Niagara Falls and the Grand Canyon, arguing that their features suggest they were formed rapidly, maybe even in a matter of days, by forces far more powerful than simple erosion.
So these iconic landmarks could be scars left behind by these ancient cataclysms. That's pretty mind-blowing. What other evidence does he have?
He brings in some intriguing evidence from ancient maps like the Piri Reis map,
Okay.
a Turkish map from the 16th century.
Okay.
This this seems to depict Antarctica before it was covered in ice.
What?
And that's a detail that has baffled historians for centuries.
Whoa, a map of Antarctica without ice. That's like finding a snapshot from a lost world.
I know, right?
Okay, I'm officially hooked. Tell me more.
Well, one of the most compelling pieces of evidence Thomas presents is his interpretation of the biblical book of Genesis.
Okay.
He argues that when you read it through the lens of a cataclysmic event, the whole story takes on a new meaning.
Wait, so you're saying Genesis might not just be a creation myth, but an actual historical account of a cataclysm. How does that work?
Thomas points to specific verses in Genesis that seem to align with the events we've been talking about.
Okay.
For example, the descriptions of a world covered in water, a sudden shift in day and night, and the survival of a select few these could all be interpreted as echoes of a global cataclysm.
Wow, that's a whole new way of looking at Genesis. It's like those optical illusions where you see one image and then suddenly your brain flips it and you see something completely different.
Exactly. And that's what makes the Adam and Eve story so fascinating. It challenges our preconceived notions and forces us to reconsider our understanding of history, religion, and even our place in the universe.
Okay, so we've got geological formations, ancient maps, and a reinterpreted Genesis. What else is in store for us on this deep dive?
Well, this is where Thomas's theory takes an even more intriguing turn. He introduces the figure of Vishnu, a Hindu god.
Okay.
But get this. He suggests that Vishnu wasn't just a mythological deity, but a real person who lived through the Cataclysm 11,500 years ago and left behind a warning for future generations.
Hold on. You're saying a Hindu god might have been a real person who survived a cataclysm and is trying to warn us?
I know it sounds wild, right?
Yeah.
But that's what makes this so compelling. We're going to explore this Vishnu angle, delve into the potential warnings he left behind, and even discuss the implications for our understanding of religion and spirituality.
All right, my mind is officially blown. I need a minute to process all of this.
Don't worry, we'll unpack it all together, and trust me, this is just the beginning of the ride.
All right.
Buckle up.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get back to this whole Vishnu thing.
Okay.
This idea of Vishnu as like a real person.
Okay.
Thomas suggests that Vishnu lived through this cataclysm around 11,500 years ago and witnessed firsthand all these devastating effects.
Okay, so you're saying this figure we know as a Hindu god might have actually walked the earth.
Right.
And seen this cataclysm unfold.
That's right. And Thomas argues that Vishnu, having survived this catastrophic event, felt like a responsibility to warn future generations about the cyclical nature of these cataclysms.
Oh, wow.
He's suggesting that Vishnu embedded these warnings in the stories and myths that would eventually become part of Hindu tradition.
So it's those folk tales,
Right.
They get passed down through generations.
Yeah.
Often with a hidden lesson or moral.
Exactly.
But in this case, the lesson is watch out for the next cataclysm.
Exactly. And this connects back to what we were talking about earlier about all those flood myths.
Right.
Found in cultures all over the world.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how these seemingly unrelated stories from different parts of the world might actually be rooted in a shared traumatic experience.
Okay. I'm starting to see how the pieces of this puzzle fit together.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the science for a minute. We've talked about geological formations and ancient maps.
Right.
But what about hard scientific data?
Yeah.
Is there anything to support Thomas's claims about these cataclysms?
Thomas cites a specific event, the sudden disappearance of the Laurentide ice sheet around 11,500 years ago.
Okay.
Geologists, they know this happened.
Right.
But the cause has always been a bit of a mystery.
Right.
Thomas links it directly to a crustal shift.
Okay.
Arguing that the rapid melting of this massive ice sheet was a consequence of a sudden change in the Earth's axis.
So if the Earth tilts on its axis,
yeah,
that could cause massive climate change, melting ice caps.
Yeah.
And trigger all sorts of chaos.
Precisely. And he doesn't stop there.
Okay.
Remember those geological formations we were talking about?
Yeah, Niagara Falls,
the Grand Canyon?
Yeah.
Thomas argues that their unique features suggest a rapid formation process, not that slow erosion we typically learn about.
Right, he's saying these massive canyons and waterfalls weren't carved out over millions of years.
Right.
But maybe in a matter of days or weeks.
Yeah.
Due to the immense forces unleashed during a cataclysm.
Exactly. It's like trying to imagine the power of a tsunami carving out a canyon like the Grand Canyon in a geological blink of an eye.
Right?
It's a mind-boggling concept.
Yeah, I'm starting to realize that Thomas isn't just piecing together random bits of information.
Right.
He's creating a whole new narrative.
Yeah.
A different way of understanding Earth's history.
Right.
One that challenges our traditional timelines and explanations.
And that's what makes his work so thought-provoking.
Right.
It forces us to question what we think we know about the past.
Yeah.
And to consider the possibility that our understanding might be incomplete.
Yeah.
Maybe even fundamentally flawed.
It's almost like we're looking at a completely different map of history.
Yeah.
One where cataclysms are not just anomalies.
Right.
But recurring events that have shaped the course of civilization.
And if these events are cyclical, as Thomas suggests, then it's not a matter of if it will happen again, but when.
Okay, now you're making me nervous, but seriously, if Thomas is right, what does this mean for us?
Right.
Should we be preparing for the next cataclysm, building bunkers and stocking up on canned goods?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily start prepping for a doomsday scenario just yet.
Okay.
But I do think Thomas's work serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of understanding our planet and its history.
Yeah.
The more we know about these past events, the better equipped we might be to face future challenges.
So knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
Even when it comes to ancient cataclysms.
And Thomas goes a step further.
Yeah.
He argues that by studying these past cataclysms, we might be able to gain insights into the patterns of nature and even develop ways to mitigate the impact of future events.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
So instead of just fearing these cataclysms,
right,
we should try to learn from them.
Exactly.
And maybe even find ways to prepare for them.
It's about shifting our perspective from one of fear and helplessness to one of understanding and preparedness.
This is all so much to process. I feel like my whole understanding of history and science is being shaken up.
That's the beauty of deep dives. Like, they challenge our assumptions and force us to expand our thinking.
All right, so we've talked about the science, the myths, and the potential implications.
Yeah.
But I'm still curious about this whole Vishnu angle.
Okay.
What kind of warnings did he supposedly leave behind?
Well, according to Thomas, Vishnu embedded his warnings within, like, Hindu scriptures and traditions.
Okay.
He suggests that stories about cycles of creation and destruction,
Okay.
like the concept of Yugas,
Yeah.
are actually veiled references to these cataclysmic events.
So these ancient religious texts might actually be like coded messages about past cataclysms and warnings about future ones.
That's what Thomas believes, and he points to similar cyclical concepts found in other cultures, like the Mayan calendar, with its focus on cycles of time.
Right.
And the idea of a great cycle ending in 2020.
It's fascinating how these ancient cultures, often separated by vast distances and with no known contact, seem to have arrived at similar ideas about cyclical time and catastrophic change.
It really is, and it raises intriguing questions about what our ancestors knew and how they understood the world around them.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
We've explored the evidence for cataclysms.
Right.
Delved into the potential connection to ancient myths and religious traditions, and even discussed the idea of Vishnu as a real person who lived through one of these events and left behind warnings.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Wow.
There's so much more to unpack in the Adam and Eve story.
Okay, before we move on, I just want to make sure I understand the key takeaway here.
Yeah.
Thomas is basically saying that Earth has a history of these catastrophic events.
Right.
They might be cyclical.
Yeah.
And we should pay attention to the warnings embedded in ancient myths and traditions.
That's a great summary, and I think the most important point is that we shouldn't dismiss these ancient stories as mere fantasy.
Right.
They might hold valuable insights into our planet's past and even clues about our future.
It's like those old sayings that get passed down through families.
Yeah.
They might sound silly or outdated.
Right.
But there's often a kernel of truth or wisdom hidden within them.
Exactly. And in the case of these ancient myths, that wisdom might be about the cyclical nature of Earth's history and the importance of preparedness.
All right. I'm officially intrigued.
Yeah.
What else does Thomas have in store for us?
Well, in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore the implications of Thomas's theory for our understanding of history science and even spirituality.
Okay.
We'll delve into his specific interpretations of biblical passages, examine the potential warnings embedded in ancient Hindu traditions, and discuss the possibility that these cataclysms might have played a role in shaping human consciousness itself.
Wow. Okay, I'm ready to dive deeper into this rabbit hole. Lead the way. Okay. My head is spinning a little after all that we went from ancient cataclysms to hidden messages and myths, and even the idea of a Hindu god being a real person.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, but I think it's important to remember that Thomas isn't just trying to, shock us with wild theories.
Right.
He's presenting a different way of looking at the world, one that challenges our assumptions about history and science and even, our own place in the grand scheme of things.
So let's try to put it all together. If we accept for a moment that these cataclysmic events have happened in the past and might even happen again, what does that mean for us today? Should we be panicking, building underground bunkers, hoarding canned goods?
I don't think panic is ever a helpful response, but I do think Thomas's work is a powerful wake-up call,
Right.
It reminds us that we're not invincible. Nature is a force to be reckoned with, and that maybe our ancestors had a deeper understanding of these cycles than we give them credit for.
So instead of fearing these cataclysms, we should try to learn from them.
Exactly, and that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Thomas suggests that these ancient myths and traditions aren't just stories. They're encoded messages from our ancestors, warnings about the cyclical nature of these events, and guidance on how to prepare for them.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example. How do these myths actually help us understand or prepare for a cataclysm?
Well, let's look at the concept of Yugas in Hindu tradition.
Okay.
These are vast cycles of time, each associated with different stages of spiritual and material development.
Okay.
Thomas argues that these Yugas might actually be describing the cyclical rise and fall of civilizations, possibly linked to these cataclysmic events.
So each yuga represents a cycle of creation, flourishing, decline, and destruction, potentially mirroring the effects of these cataclysms.
That's one interpretation, and it's not just limited to Hinduism. Remember the Mayan calendar and the whole 2012 phenomenon?
Yeah.
That was based on the Mayan concept of great cycles of time, each ending in a period of upheaval and transformation.
It's amazing how these ancient cultures, often separated by vast distances in time, seem to have arrived at similar ideas about cyclical time and the potential for catastrophic change.
And that's what makes Thomas's work so compelling. He's drawing connections between seemingly disparate pieces of information, geological data, ancient myths, religious traditions, even astronomical observations.
Right.
To create a new narrative, a new understanding of our place in the universe.
It's almost like he's saying that history isn't just a linear progression, but a spiral with periods of growth and flourishing, followed by periods of decline and destruction, and then a new cycle begins.
Exactly. And if we can understand these cycles, maybe we can break free from this pattern of destruction and create a more sustainable future.
Okay, that's a thought-provoking idea.
Yeah.
So instead of fearing the end of the world, we should see it as an opportunity for renewal, for a new beginning.
That's a powerful way to look at it, and it ties into Thomas's message of hope. He argues that even in the face of unimaginable destruction, life finds a way.
It's like the phoenix rising from the ashes.
Exactly, and he believes that we as humans have the capacity to not just survive, but to thrive, to learn from the past, and to create a better future.
I have to admit, I started this deep dive feeling a little skeptical, but now I'm finding myself thinking about things in a whole new way. It's like a light bulb has gone off in my head.
That's the beauty of exploring these unconventional ideas. They challenge our preconceived notions and force us to expand our thinking.
So where do we go from here? What are we supposed to do with all this information about cataclysms and cycles and ancient warnings?
Well, I think the first step is awareness. We need to educate ourselves about Earth's history, about the cyclical nature of these events, and about the potential risks we face. We can support scientific research, promote sustainable living practices, and work together to create a more resilient and adaptable society.
And maybe we should start paying a little more attention to those ancient myths and traditions. They might just hold some wisdom that we've forgotten.
I think you're right. They offer a different perspective, a way of understanding the world that's been lost in our modern, technologically driven society.
Well, this has been an incredibly thought-provoking journey. We've explored the possibility of ancient cataclysms, decoded hidden messages in myths, and even pondered the nature of time and consciousness. It's definitely a lot to process.
It is, and I encourage you to continue exploring these ideas, to dive deeper into the source material and to draw your own conclusions.
I think that's the perfect note to end on this. Deep Dive has been a wild ride, but it's left me with a sense of wonder, a thirst for knowledge, and maybe even a little bit of hope.
And that's what it's all about. Keep those minds curious, keep asking questions, and keep exploring the mysteries of our world and beyond.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.